Hey Bookworms, it's Jade. Today I'm bringing you my October wrap-up. I read 3 books in October in addition to a novella, which I already mentioned in my September wrap-up because I read it on October 1st. So 3 books is a little less than average for me. I tend to read about a book a week, but one of the books that I read this month was a really long book. It was almost as long as 2 books, so I still think that's a pretty good month. Let's get started. So like I mentioned, I read a novella on October 1st and I put it in my last wrap-up, and that was the final novella in the Chaos Walking trilogy, which is called Snowscape. Then the next book that I read in October is Never Fade by Alexandra Bracken. I actually already turned that into the library, so I don't have a copy to show you, but I'm gonna put a picture of it here. I was actually reading this book at the very end of the Slay That Series readathon. So Never Fade is the second book in the Darkest Minds trilogy. I read the first book in the series, The Darkest Minds, a few months ago, and I loved it. The way that book ended, I was just dying to read the rest of the series, and I finally got around to it in October. Darkest Minds is a sci-fi dystopian series. It's set in the US in the near future, and in this world, all of a sudden, kids around the age of puberty start either dying or developing these like superpowers. And basically, a lot of the adults start to become afraid of the children of the world because they can't control them. All these kids get sent to basically like concentration camps. So the very first book, The Darkest Minds, is about Ruby and how she escapes from one of these camps and her adventures thereafter. Honestly, this book series reminds me a lot of the show Heroes, or at least Heroes Reborn, probably because I'm currently watching that series. I really enjoyed the original Heroes and I'm enjoying this continuation. I definitely see some parallels of, people without powers being afraid of people who have powers, and so that's been a really fun parallel to see. I really enjoyed the second book in this series, and I highly recommend this series, especially if you enjoy dystopian books. I know a lot of people are kind of tired of dystopians. I'm not quite there yet. I still really love reading dystopians. So if you're not tired of dystopians yet, this is definitely a series that I recommend. This series also introduced me to my newest book boyfriend, which is Liam Stewart. I think he's completely swoon-worthy, and I'm obsessed with him. I couldn't put this book down, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read in the month of October was The Diviners by Libba Bray. I not only read this book in physical form, but I also listened to it on audiobook, and I'm really glad that I did because it's a really long book, so it helped me kind of speed through it a little bit faster. Still, this book took me about 2 weeks to read, which makes sense to me because it's about the length of 2 normal books for me. I was hoping to read some scary or Halloweenish books during October, and this is one that a lot of people recommended. Honestly, I had a lot of high hopes for this book, and I was a little disappointed. I know a lot of people really love this book, and I think I might have set my expectations a little too high because the book fell a little short for me. So for those of you who don't know, this story is set in the 1920s, and it's mostly about this character named Evie, although there is a huge cast of characters in this book. So Evie and her friends get involved in this murder mystery, which ends up having like a paranormal aspect to it. Even though there is this supernatural aspect to the story, I personally didn't find it very scary, but I am one of those people who likes to watch scary movies. I think I do get scared easily, but I enjoy the process of getting scared, but this book it didn't scare me. I think one of the reasons why I had a hard time with this book is because there is a lot of 20s slang in it. I can definitely tell that Libba Bray did a lot of research about the time period, and I really appreciate that. I always love it when historical fiction is really realistic, but unfortunately the 20s slang that was in the novel just didn't really work for me. I thought listening to it on audiobook was really cool because it kind of helped me get more in the mood and envision this 20s setting a little bit better than if I had just read it, because I could hear the 20s slang used, but still the 20s slang just didn't work for me for some reason. Overall, I was disappointed with this book, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It was just okay. There wasn't anything really wrong with it. It just didn't really enthrall me the way that I wanted it to. So the next book that I read in October was The Martian by Weir. I was actually doing a buddy read with a couple of bloggers for this book. I bought it on Kindle, and I mostly read it on Kindle. Unfortunately, the girls that I was doing the buddy read with just weren't really liking the book, so one of them was kind enough to actually send me her copy. So now I have a physical copy of this book, so thank you, Shoshana. I'll link the blog of the two girls that were doing the buddy read with me down below so you can check them out because they're both really awesome bloggers. The Martian is about a character named Mark Watney, and he goes to Mars along with other astronauts and accidentally gets stranded there, and it's his survival story. So obviously this is a science fiction book. I will say that it is very science heavy. Mark Watney is an engineer, and so he talks a lot about the chemistry and the math that he used to survive on Mars. I personally really enjoyed that aspect just because I have a science background and I could understand what he was talking about, and I found it really interesting. But that's actually what turned my two blogging friends off of this book, was because it was just so science heavy, especially in the beginning, and it just didn't hold their interest because of that, and I completely understand that. The science heavy aspect of this book, I think, could turn a lot of people off of it. I found this book to be also really funny. Mark Watney has a dry sense of humor, and he's always cracking jokes that had me giggling while I was reading this book. So I gave The Martian 4 out of 5 stars, mostly because of that science heavy aspect, and I could see why some people wouldn't enjoy it. I also saw the movie adaptation of this book this month, and I really liked it. I thought they did a great job of capturing a lot of what was going on in the book and putting it into the movie. There were some things that they left out, which happens with every movie adaptation. I did think that some of the humor didn't translate quite as well onto the screen, but I still found the movie really funny. And I guess I would give the movie 4 out of 5 stars as well. So those are all the things that I actually finished in October. So one thing I haven't mentioned on this channel is that I post reviews of all the books that I read on my blog. It takes me a little while for me to actually post the review, but they'll be there eventually. And when I do, I'll also post the links to those reviews down below. I think I've decided that I'm not actually gonna film a review for every book I read because I'm not posting videos that often and it'd be really hard. So if I ever talk about a book that you want to hear more in-depth thoughts about, please let me know in the comments, and if it's requested, I will do a video review of it. But otherwise, you can always just check my blog and it'll have a written review. Even if it's like a month after I read the book, it'll be up there. I definitely have a lot more to say about these books, but they're just gonna be in my written reviews. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to like, comment, or subscribe if you want to see more. That's all I have for now, so see you guys next time. Bye! And how is about the why can't I talk? Here is the I didn't hold it up. So one thing that I haven't mentioned on this channel is that so one thing I haven't mentioned